At Silver Oak, co-owner Monica Taylor faces shocking disrespect from a waiter who has no idea she's the boss. What starts as bad service quickly reveals deep-seated prejudice, leading Monica and her husband Daniel to confront the truth about their restaurant's values. With tensions rising, they must decide whether to stand up for what's right, even if it means shaking the foundation of the place they built. Curious how it all unfolds? Like, comment, and subscribe to follow Monica's powerful journey, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a moment of this gripping story. Monica Taylor stepped through the sleek glass doors of Silver Oak, her heels clicking softly against the polished marble floor. The restaurant, bathed in the warm glow of amber lights, hummed with quiet conversation and the soft clinking of glasses. The muted jazz in the background gave the place an intimate and luxurious atmosphere, a perfect backdrop for the success it had become. Monica inhaled deeply, a sense of pride swelling in her chest. This restaurant wasn't just any place. It was hers. Well, hers and Daniel's. They'd built Silver Oak from nothing, carefully curating its reputation as a go-to destination for fine dining in the city. It had taken years of dedication, sweat, and an unyielding belief in themselves. Now it stood as a symbol of everything they'd worked for: success, inclusivity, and excellence. The hostess smiled warmly at her as she led Monica to her usual corner table, a small but cozy spot where she and Daniel often sat during their quiet evenings together. Monica couldn't help but admire the familiar sight of the restaurant: white linen tablecloths, flickering candlelight, and walls adorned with tasteful art pieces. It was their sanctuary. Tonight, however, something felt a little different. Monica sat down and glanced around, her eyes scanning the familiar faces of the waitstaff, the buzz of the kitchen barely audible in the background. Daniel was running late, as usual. He had texted her, urging her to go ahead and order without him. But as she sat there, her phone resting on the table, she couldn't shake the slight unease that had settled in her stomach. Maybe it was just that being here without him made her feel oddly exposed. Usually when they were together, there was a sense of security, an unspoken understanding that they were a team. But alone, she felt the weight of her presence more acutely. Monica took a sip of the water that had been placed in front of her by the hostess, trying to push away the feeling. Silver Oak was her home turf, after all. She belonged here more than anyone. A tall, lean waiter approached Monica's table. He wore the signature black and white uniform of the Silver Oak staff, his blonde hair neatly combed back. His name tag read David, but unlike the warm, attentive service Monica was used to, there was something off about him. He didn't smile, didn't introduce himself, didn't even bother making eye contact as he stood stiffly by her table. "You ready to order?" David asked, his tone flat, almost as if the words were an obligation rather than a greeting. Monica blinked, slightly taken aback by the abruptness of the interaction. She hadn't even glanced at the menu yet, waiting for Daniel to arrive. But the way David asked made her feel like she was inconveniencing him just by sitting there. She glanced at the table, her brow furrowing slightly before responding. "I'll just have some water for now, please. I'll wait to order when my husband gets here." David scribbled something down on his notepad, though his lack of acknowledgement made her wonder if he even heard her. "Sure," he muttered, then turned on his heel and walked away without another word. Monica watched him go, a strange knot of unease forming in her stomach. She tried to brush it off. Maybe he was just having a rough day. It happened, she told herself, but still, something didn't sit right. As she sat alone, she noticed the way David interacted with the other guests. A middle-aged couple at a nearby table caught her eye. He greeted them with a warm smile, laughed at something they said, and swiftly topped off their wine glasses. The contrast between how he treated them and how he had treated her was glaring. Monica shook her head, trying to shrug off the growing sense of discomfort. She'd been here countless times with Daniel, and the service was always impeccable. But tonight, something felt wrong. Maybe she was just being sensitive. The minutes ticked by. She watched as David moved through the restaurant with ease, attending to every table but hers. She glanced at the empty glass in front of her, her earlier unease transforming into mild frustration. Was he really ignoring her? Her phone buzzed on the table. It was a message from Daniel. "Running late, babe. Go ahead and order whatever you like. Be there soon. Monica sighed softly and put her phone down, her eyes wandering back to David. He was now attending to a large group by the window, laughing as he poured wine and set dishes in front of them. The knot in her chest tightened. She had been sitting here for at least 20 minutes, and David hadn't returned once. Monica shifted in her seat, trying to decide what to do. She wasn't the type to make a scene, but she also wasn't one to sit back and be disrespected. She flagged down a young waitress, Jessica, who was passing by, her demeanor much friendlier. "Excuse me," Monica said, her voice calm but firm. "I've been waiting for a while. Could you bring me some water, please?" Jessica blinked, clearly surprised. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll get it for you right away." Monica watched as Jessica hurried off, feeling a surge of gratitude for the quick response. But her frustration with David remained. She couldn't help but wonder why he had ignored her for so long, especially in a restaurant where the service was supposed to be seamless. As Monica waited, sipping the water Jessica had quickly brought, her eyes stayed on David. She observed him closely, and the more she watched, the clearer it became. He deliberately avoided her. Every time he passed by her table, he made sure not to look her way, gliding between other guests with ease while continuing to ignore her presence. Her frustration grew. She had been coming to Silver Oak for years. She knew the staff, the level of service, and what was expected. But tonight felt like an entirely different experience, and deep down, Monica knew why. Her fingers tapped lightly on the edge of the table, her thoughts racing. She had dealt with subtle forms of racism before, the kind that was often difficult to prove, but unmistakable in how it made her feel. She had learned over the years to pick her battles, to decide when it was worth speaking up and when it wasn't. But tonight, this felt different. The blatant disregard, the coldness. It wasn't just poor service, it felt personal. She checked her phone again. Still no message from Daniel. Her stomach growled, a reminder that she hadn't even had a chance to order food. The longer she sat there, the more the tension inside her grew, building like a coiled spring ready to snap. 20 more minutes passed, and still, no sign of David. Monica's patience had officially run out. She sat up straighter, taking a deep breath as she tried to calm herself. She wasn't going to let this slide. When David finally reappeared from the kitchen, Monica raised her hand, her voice louder than before. "Excuse me," she called, her tone firm and unwavering. David paused, glancing at her with a blank expression before reluctantly walking over. "What can I get you?" he asked flatly, without any trace of the warmth or enthusiasm he had shown to the other tables. Monica stared at him for a moment, disbelief washing over her. "I'd like to place my order. I've been waiting for quite some time." David shrugged, his disinterest palpable. "We've been busy." Monica's eyebrows shot up. Busy? She had been watching him effortlessly attend to every other table for the past hour. Her voice was measured, but the edge was undeniable. "I've noticed you've had time to serve everyone else. Is there a reason I've been sitting here for nearly 30 minutes without having my order taken?" David shifted on his feet, his expression hardening slightly. "Maybe you're just being sensitive," he muttered, his tone almost dismissive. Monica's grip on her glass tightened, but she kept her composure. Sensitive? She had heard that line before. It was the kind of comment designed to invalidate her experience, to make her feel like she was imagining things. "Sensitive?" Monica repeated, her voice low but sharp. "I'm asking for the same service you're providing to every other customer in this restaurant. That's not being sensitive. It's asking for basic respect." David sighed, clearly growing irritated. "Look, we're short-staffed and there's a lot going on. I'll take your order, but if you're going to accuse me of—" "I'm not accusing you of anything," Monica cut in, her voice steady. "I'm pointing out the difference in how you're treating me compared to everyone else here, and I think you know exactly what I'm talking about." The tension between them was palpable. David's expression hardened further, his mouth pulling into a thin line. He didn't respond, but instead pulled out his notepad, his movements stiff and mechanical. "What do you want to order?" he asked, his tone icy. Monica held his gaze, refusing to back down. "I'll have the house special," she said, her voice calm but firm. David scribbled something down and walked away without another word, leaving Monica sitting there with a mixture of anger and indignation swirling inside her. This wasn't just about poor service. It was something deeper, something more insidious. As the minutes ticked by, Monica's frustration simmered beneath the surface. She checked her phone again, hoping Daniel would arrive soon. She needed him now more than ever, not just for his support, but because she knew this situation wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Monica sat in silence, the clinking of glasses and hum of conversations around her feeling distant, as if she were no longer part of the world she had helped create. She had been waiting for nearly an hour now, and her patience had worn thin. The sense of unease she had felt earlier had solidified into something much sharper. Anger, frustration, and disbelief. How could this happen here in Silver Oak, her and Daniel's restaurant? David had still not returned with her food. She watched him glide between tables with its same effortless grace, smiling, chatting, and pouring drinks with ease for every guest, except her. She had been reduced to an afterthought, or worse, a nonentity. Her hands, which had been resting on the table, balled into fists. It wasn't about the food anymore. It was the principle. Just then, the door to the restaurant swung open, and a familiar figure walked in. Daniel. Relief flooded through Monica as she watched her husband approach. He cut an impressive figure, tall and commanding in his tailored suit. His presence was magnetic, drawing the attention of several patrons as he strode across the restaurant. But his eyes were focused only on her, concern flickering across his face as he took in her expression. Monica's lips pressed into a thin line, her earlier frustration bubbling just beneath the surface. "I'm fine," she replied, her voice tense. "But I've been waiting for an hour. David hasn't brought my food, and he's been ignoring me all night." Daniel's brow furrowed, his gaze sharpening as he glanced around the room, his eyes locking onto David, who was busy laughing with another table near the window. "He hasn't taken your order yet?" "He did," Monica said, her voice calm but seething with frustration. "But he never put it in, and when I called him out on it, he acted like I was being oversensitive." Daniel's jaw clenched, and Monica could see the familiar fire ignite in his eyes. He turned, his calm demeanor now edged with authority as he signaled for David to come over. David glanced up from the table he was serving, his eyes widening slightly as he realized who was calling him. There was no mistake in the sudden flicker of nervousness that passed across his face. Slowly he made his way over, his earlier swagger noticeably absent. "Yes, sir," David said, his tone stiff as he addressed Daniel, deliberately avoiding eye contact with Monica. Daniel folded his arms across his chest, his voice steady, but carrying the unmistakable weight of authority. "My wife tells me she's been sitting here for over an hour, and you still haven't brought her meal." David shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting between the two of them. We've been busy, sir. I was going to get to it." "Busy?" Daniel's voice was calm, but his eyes blazed. "You've managed to attend to every other table in this restaurant without any issues. So why is it that my wife has been sitting here, ignored for an hour?" David swallowed hard, but still tried to maintain his composure. I didn't realize, sir. I didn't mean to." Daniel's voice hardened. "No, you realized. You just didn't care. You thought you could treat her differently because you didn't know who she was. Isn't that right?" David's face flushed, the last remnants of his confidence quickly evaporating. He stammered, searching for words, but Daniel wasn't finished. "My wife is the co-owner of this restaurant," Daniel continued, his tone growing colder. "She helped build this place, and you thought it was okay to disrespect her." Monica sat quietly, watching the scene unfold, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never seen David look so small, so utterly defeated. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath, the once lively chatter now reduced to hushed whispers. David's eyes widened as the full weight of his mistake settled in. I didn't know, sir. I swear, I didn't know she was your wife. If I had..." "That's the point," Daniel cut in sharply. "It shouldn't matter who she is. Every customer in this restaurant deserves respect. But you singled her out, didn't you?" David opened his mouth, but no words came out. His face had gone pale, and it was clear he was scrambling to find a way out. But there was none. Monica's anger simmered just beneath the surface, watching as David fumbled for excuses. She had been silent long enough. "I'm not asking for special treatment," Monica said, her voice low but firm. "I'm asking for the same respect you've given every other person in this restaurant tonight. The fact that I even have to explain that to you is part of the problem." David's shoulders slumped and he shifted uncomfortably under the weight of their gazes. "I'm really sorry," he mumbled, barely audible now. "I didn't mean—" "Enough," Daniel interrupted, his tone final. "You'll leave now. We'll deal with this properly tomorrow." Without another word, David turned and walked away, his steps heavy and defeated as he disappeared into the back of the restaurant. The tension in the air hung thick, but the worst of it had passed. Slowly, the noise of the restaurant began to resume, though it was clear that everyone had witnessed the exchange. Daniel turned back to Monica, his expression softening as he reached for her hand. "Are you sure you're okay?" he asked, his voice gentle now, a stark contrast to the cold authority he had shown moments ago. Monica exhaled slowly, the tension that had built up inside her over the past hour finally starting to dissipate. "I'm okay," she said, though her voice was still shaky. I couldn't believe how blatant he was." Daniel squeezed her hand, his eyes filled with admiration and warmth. "You handled that perfectly. I'm sorry you had to deal with that alone." "I'm glad you came when you did," Monica admitted, leaning into his warmth. "I wasn't sure how far he was going to push it." Daniel's jaw tightened slightly, the anger from earlier still simmering beneath the surface. Some people think they can get away with that kind of behavior, especially when they assume no one will call them out. But not here. Not in our restaurant. Monica nodded, feeling a deep sense of relief, but also a lingering frustration. David's behavior had been appalling, but it wasn't just about him. It was about a larger issue, one that she knew they would have to address, not just with their staff, but within the restaurant culture itself. "I'll be there tomorrow," Monica said quietly, her voice steady. "When we talk to him, he needs to hear it from both of us." Daniel nodded, his expression serious but understanding. "Of course. We'll make sure he understands exactly why this won't be tolerated." Monica felt a sense of calm wash over her. The worst of the night was behind them, but she knew there was still more to come. Tomorrow they will face David again, and this time he would have to confront the full consequences of his actions. The next morning, Monica stood in the quiet of Daniel's office waiting for David to arrive. The air in the room was thick with tension, though neither she nor Daniel had spoken much since arriving at the restaurant. They both knew what needed to be done, and the weight of it hung heavily over them. Monica sat in one of the leather chairs across from Daniel's desk, her fingers lightly tapping the armrest. She was determined to stay calm, to hold her ground without letting her emotions get the better of her. But the truth was, her anger hadn't faded. If anything, it had only deepened overnight, now sharpened by the clarity that had come with time to reflect on what had happened. David had thought he could get away with treating her differently because he didn't see her as someone who mattered, and that stung. "Are you sure you want to be here for this?" Daniel asked, glancing up from the papers on his desk, his tone soft but serious. "I need to be here," Monica replied firmly. "This isn't just about you or the restaurant. It's about the principal. He needs to hear it from both of us." Daniel nodded, understanding. He stood and walked over to the window, looking out at the quiet street below. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting long shadows across the office, but it did little to lighten the mood. Monica could feel the weight of the upcoming confrontation pressing down on both of them, like the calm before a storm. A knock sounded at the door, and Daniel turned. With a deep breath, he called out, "Come in!" The door creaked open, and David shuffled into the room, looking worlds away from the confident, smug waiter he had been the night before. His shoulders were slumped, his eyes downcast, and his steps were hesitant. There was a slight tremor in his hands as he sat down in the chair across from them, his usual bravado replaced with nervous uncertainty. "Good morning, David," Daniel said, his voice flat and devoid of any warmth. "I assume you know why you're here." David nodded quickly, his eyes darting between them, but never quite settling on either one. "Yes, sir," he mumbled. "I know." "Good," Daniel replied, his tone firm, "because this isn't just about bad service. What happened last night was unacceptable in more ways than one. Do you have anything you want to say before we start?" David fidgeted in his seat, his fingers nervously twisting in his lap. He glanced at Monica, but quickly looked away again. "I'm sorry for what happened, sir," he said quietly, though there was little conviction in his voice. "I didn't mean for it to come off like that." Daniel's eyes narrowed, his tone sharp. "Come off like what exactly?" David fumbled with his words, his voice shaky. "I didn't mean to offend anyone. It wasn't personal. I was just busy and things got away from me. I didn't know she was—" He trailed off, clearly unsure of how to finish the sentence. "My wife?" Daniel finished for him. His voice is harder now. David nodded quickly, his discomfort growing by the second. "Yes, sir. If I'd known—" Monica finally spoke up, her voice sharp and cutting through his excuses like a blade. "If you'd known I was his wife, you would have treated me differently? Is that what you're saying?" David froze, realizing too late what he had implied. His eyes widened, and he stammered, No, that's not what I meant. I just—" Monica leaned forward slightly, her voice steady but laced with anger. "What you meant, David, is that you thought you could get away with treating me like I didn't matter. Because to you, I didn't. Isn't that the truth?" David's face flushed red, his mouth opening and closing as he struggled to find a way out. But there was none. He had been cornered, and now he had no choice but to face the reality of his actions. I didn't think it was going to be a big deal," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't think anyone would notice." Daniel's jaw tightened, and Monica could see the fire in his eyes. "Well, you thought wrong," Daniel said coldly, "because we noticed. And your behavior isn't just unprofessional, it's unacceptable." David hung his head, the weight of his actions clearly pressing down on him. For a moment the room was silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Monica spoke up again, her voice firm and resolute. "You singled me out because of who I am, because you thought no one would care. But this restaurant stands for something more than just fine dining. It stands for respect, for dignity. And if you can't treat every customer who walks through those doors with the same level of respect, then you don't belong here." David looked up, his eyes filled with regret. "I'm really sorry," he said, his voice trembling. "I didn't mean—" "Apologies won't fix this," Daniel interrupted, his voice firm. "You need to understand that your actions have consequences, and this restaurant will not tolerate discrimination of any kind." The silence that followed was heavy, but there was a finality to it that made it clear the conversation was over. David had made his choices, and now he had to face the consequences. Monica sat back in her chair, the silence in the room heavy after David's last pitiful attempt at an apology. She had faced moments like this before. Situations where someone's prejudice had made her feel invisible, or worse, unworthy of basic decency. But this time was different. This wasn't just a random act of racism in a public space. This had happened in the restaurant she and Daniel had built. Silver Oak was supposed to be a sanctuary, a place where they had instilled values of respect and inclusivity in every corner. And yet David had managed to slip through the cracks. Daniel, still standing, exhaled slowly, visibly trying to maintain his composure. He walked around his desk, standing directly in front of David, who still hadn't met his eyes since the meeting had started. "David," Daniel began, his voice low but filled with controlled anger. "You have no idea how lucky you are that I'm even giving you the chance to sit here and explain yourself. I've fired people for much less. But this, what you did last night, was more than just poor service. It was blatant disrespect, fueled by something far worse." David shifted in his seat, his fingers twisting nervously in his lap. "Sir, I swear, I didn't mean—" "Stop!" Daniel interrupted sharply, holding up a hand. "I don't need any more excuses. What I need from you is an honest answer. Why did you feel it was okay to ignore my wife? What gave you the confidence to think she wouldn't say anything?" David hesitated, his gaze flicking briefly to Monica, who was now staring at him with cold, unflinching eyes. He swallowed hard, the words he wanted to say seemingly trapped in his throat. He knew there was no way to escape this without telling the truth. I don't know," he mumbled, his voice barely audible. I didn't think it was going to be a problem. I didn't think it was that big of a deal." Monica leaned forward, her anger simmering just beneath the surface. "It wasn't a big deal because you thought I wouldn't speak up, right? Because I'm black. And in your mind, that meant I didn't deserve the same level of respect as everyone else in this restaurant. David flinched at her words, his face flushing bright red. He opened his mouth to protest, but the look on Monica's face stopped him. She had said exactly what he had been thinking, and there was no point in denying it now. The truth hung in the air, raw and exposed. I didn't mean it like that, he stammered, his voice shaky. I swear I didn't realize. Daniel took a step closer, towering over David, his voice cold and sharp. What you didn't realize is that my wife and I built this restaurant on values of equality and respect. You've worked here for over a year, and I expected better from you. But last night you made it clear that you don't share those values, and there's no place for someone like that in Silver Oak. David's eyes widened in panic as he realized where the conversation was heading. Sir, please, I need this job. I know I messed up, but I'll do better. I'll make it right, I swear. Just give me one more chance. Monica's eyes narrowed as she spoke, her voice steady but filled with the weight of everything she had endured the night before. You had your chance, David. You had the chance to treat me with the same respect you showed everyone else, and you chose not to. This isn't just about you making a mistake. It's about the mindset that made you think it was okay to treat me differently in the first place. David's shoulders slumped, his head hanging low. He knew there was no way out of this. No apology would fix the damage he had done, and no amount of pleading would change the fact that he had crossed a line he couldn't come back from. Daniel took a step back, his expression softening just slightly, though his resolve remained firm. Here's what's going to happen, he said, his tone calm but leaving no room for argument. You're going to go home and we'll deal with this officially tomorrow. But understand this, David. Your actions have consequences. We can't have someone working here who doesn't respect every single customer who walks through those doors. This isn't just about what happened last night. It's about who you are and what you believe. David swallowed hard, his voice barely a whisper as he nodded. Yes, sir, I understand. Without another word, Daniel stepped aside, and David rose slowly from the chair. His steps were heavy as he turned and walked out of the office, his head hanging in shame. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving the room in a thick silence. Monica exhaled slowly. Her body relaxed slightly as the tension of the confrontation finally began to fade. She glanced at Daniel, who was rubbing his temples, the weight of the situation clearly taking its toll on him as well. You didn't fire him right away, Monica said quietly, her voice calm but curious. Why? Daniel sighed, sinking into the chair behind his desk. I want him to stew in it for a night. Let it sink in that he's not walking out of this with just a slap on the wrist. I want him to understand that what he did was more than just a mistake. It was a deliberate choice. Tomorrow when we have the official meeting, I'll fire him. But I want him to come in knowing that his actions have real consequences. Monica nodded slowly, her anger still simmering beneath the surface, though she trusted Daniel's decision. You're giving him more chances than I would have. Daniel looked at her, his eyes softening as he reached for her hand across the desk. I know, but sometimes people like David don't realize the full impact of their actions until they're forced to confront it head on. Tomorrow when he walks in here, he'll know there's no going back. Monica squeezed his hand, feeling a surge of gratitude for his calm leadership, even in the face of such blatant disrespect. She knew that Daniel was right. There was value in making David confront the full weight of his actions before firing him. But that didn't make the situation any less infuriating. If he still doesn't get it tomorrow, Daniel said, his voice low but firm, then he's gone. Monica nodded, feeling the weight of the past 24 hours finally lift just a little. Thank you, she said quietly, her voice filled with both exhaustion and relief, for stepping in when you did. Daniel smiled softly, his eyes filled with admiration. I'll always have your back, Monica. You know that. They sat in silence for a moment, the events of the past night still lingering in the air, but no longer pressing down on them with the same intensity. Monica knew that tomorrow would bring her own challenges, but for now she felt a sense of closure, at least for the moment. David had been called out, and justice in some form was on its way. That evening, Monica and Daniel shared a quiet dinner at home, The warmth of the meal and the comforting rhythm of their conversation helped ease some of the tension that had built up throughout the day. The confrontation with David still lingered in their minds, but the storm of emotions had passed. For now. Monica sipped her wine, staring out of the window as the city lights twinkled in the distance. "Do you think he'll understand?" she asked, her voice soft, as if voicing a concern she hadn't fully acknowledged until now. Daniel looked up from his plate, his brow furrowing slightly. "Understand what?" "That this isn't just about bad service," Monica replied, turning to meet his gaze. "That this is about something much deeper. That what he did last night wasn't just a mistake. It was a reflection of who he is and how he sees people like me." Daniel sighed, setting his fork down as he leaned back in his chair. "I don't know, Monica. I hope he does. But some people, they don't change. They cling to their ignorance because it's easier than confronting the truth." Monica nodded, feeling a familiar sadness settle over her. She had spent her whole life navigating moments like the one with David. Moments where her race had been the deciding factor in how she was treated. It wasn't new, but it was exhausting. And it was even more painful when it happened in a place she had helped build. "I don't know if I'm ready for tomorrow," Monica admitted quietly. "I don't want to hear more excuses. I just want him gone." Daniel reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "I know. And if tomorrow comes and he still doesn't get it, we'll make sure he's gone. But I think it's important for him to hear the truth one last time. Maybe it'll get through to him." Monica squeezed his hand, grateful for his calm wisdom. "You're always the voice of reason, aren't you?" Daniel chuckled softly. "I try." They finished their meal in comfortable silence, the warmth of the evening washing away the tension from earlier in the day. But even as they sat together, Monica couldn't shake the lingering sense of dread that tomorrow's meeting would bring more disappointment. She hoped, for David's sake, that he would finally understand the gravity of his actions. But deep down, she knew that some lessons were harder learned than others. Monica woke to a gray, overcast sky, the kind that seemed to reflect the heaviness still lingering in her chest from the day before. She dressed quickly. Her mind was already spinning with thoughts of what lay ahead. Today wasn't just another day at Silver Oak. It was the day they would finalize their decision about David, and that meant reliving everything from the night before. As she moved through the quiet house, the tension from the upcoming confrontation built within her. The confrontation had been draining, but today felt different, more official, more permanent. It wasn't just about expressing her anger anymore. It was about holding someone accountable in a way that would echo through the restaurant and ensure that what happened never occurred again. Monica made her way to the kitchen, where Daniel was already seated at the small breakfast nook, sipping his coffee. His expression was calm, but she could see the weight of the situation in his eyes. He was just as tired as she was, but he was always the one to keep it together. "Ready for today?" he asked, his voice steady as he set his mug down. Monica sighed and sat beside him, wrapping her hands around her own steaming cup. "As ready as I'll ever be. I just want to get this over with." Daniel nodded in agreement. "It won't take long. He'll come in, we'll have our meeting, and that will be the end of it." Monica raised an eyebrow, the tension still palpable in her tone. "Do you think he'll actually understand, though? Do you think he'll get why he's being fired?" Daniel looked at her for a long moment before speaking. "I don't know, but whether he gets it or not doesn't change what has to happen. This isn't just about him. It's about setting a precedent for everyone who works at Silver Oak. No one should ever think that kind of behavior will be tolerated here." Monica nodded, knowing he was right. They weren't just doing this for themselves. They were doing it for their staff, for their customers, for everyone who walked through those doors. The stakes were much bigger than just David. They arrived at Silver Oak just before noon, the restaurant still closed to the public as the staff busily prepared for the lunch rush. Monica walked through the dining area, the usual sense of pride she felt for the place overshadowed by the lingering frustration from the day before. Everything looked perfect, the tables set with crisp white linens, the polished silverware gleaming in the soft light. But beneath the surface, she could feel the tension. As they made their way to Daniel's office, a few of the waitstaff gave Monica concerned looks, clearly aware of the events from the night before. Jessica, the young waitress who had brought Monica her water, approached her cautiously. Mrs. Taylor, she said softly, I just wanted to say, I'm really sorry about what happened last night. I didn't realize. Monica held up a hand, offering a small, tired smile. Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate it. But this isn't your fault. Jessica nodded, her expression still filled with concern. If there's anything I can do, you've done more than enough, Monica reassured her. Thank you. As Jessica walked away, Monica felt a surge of gratitude for the loyalty and respect her staff had shown her. It reminded her that while David's actions had been hurtful, they were not reflective of the values the majority of their team upheld. Silver Oak had always been more than just a business. It was a family. When they entered the office, Daniel took a seat behind his desk, his expression more serious than ever. Monica sat in the chair beside him, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The tension in the room was palpable, thick like a storm cloud ready to burst. They didn't have to wait long before there was a soft knock on the door. Come in, Daniel called, his voice calm but firm. The door opened slowly and David stepped inside, his head hanging low, his shoulders hunched in defeat. He looked far worse than the previous day, his face pale, his eyes hollow with guilt and fear. He approached the desk hesitantly, not making eye contact as he sat down in the chair across from them. The silence in the room stretched for what felt like an eternity before Daniel finally spoke. David, he began, his tone firm but calm, we gave you the night to think about what happened. So let's hear it. What have you learned? David shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his hands clasped tightly together in his lap. He swallowed hard, his voice shaky as he began to speak. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, he stammered, his words tumbling out awkwardly. And I know I made a big mistake. I wasn't thinking clearly last night, and Monica cut him off, her voice sharp and cutting through his weak apology. This isn't about being careless or making a mistake, David. You deliberately treated me differently because you thought I wouldn't speak up. You thought you could get away with it because you assumed no one would hold you accountable. David flinched at her words, his face flushing red with shame. His eyes flickered toward her, but he quickly looked away again, unable to meet her gaze. I wasn't trying to disrespect you, he muttered weakly, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't mean for it to come off that way. Monica leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as she spoke. You didn't just come off that way, David. You ignored me. You never took my order. You made a choice, a conscious decision, to treat me as less than every other customer in that restaurant. So I want to hear the truth. Why did you think it was okay to ignore me? David hesitated, his fingers twisting nervously in his lap. He swallowed hard, the silence in the room growing heavier with every passing second. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. I didn't think you'd cause any trouble, he mumbled, his words slow and reluctant. I didn't think it would matter. Monica's breath caught in her throat, a mixture of anger and vindication rising within her. She had known that's what he'd been thinking, but hearing him admit it made her blood boil. Why? She asked, her voice steady but filled with an unmistakable edge. Why didn't you think I'd say anything? David hesitated again, his eyes darting between Monica and Daniel before finally muttering the words she had been waiting to hear. Because you're black, he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. The words hung in the air, raw and exposed. For a moment, no one spoke. Monica's heart pounded in her chest as she processed what he had just admitted. He hadn't thought she would say anything, because he had assumed that, as a black woman, her voice didn't matter. It was a truth she had faced many times in her life, but hearing it so plainly stated in her own restaurant made her stomach churn. Daniel's jaw tightened, his voice low and controlled as he spoke. So you thought that because of her race, she wouldn't speak up, that she didn't deserve the same respect as the other diners? David nodded slowly, his face pale as he stared at the floor. I didn't think it was a big deal at the time, he muttered. I didn't think anyone would notice. Monica's hands clenched into fists in her lap, her voice cold as she responded. You thought wrong. David swallowed hard, his voice trembling as he tried to muster another apology. I'm really sorry, he mumbled. I know it doesn't mean much now, but I really am. Monica leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms as she studied him. You're right, she said firmly. It doesn't mean much. You knew exactly what you were doing. Apologizing now doesn't change that. Daniel leaned forward, his tone cold and final as he spoke. Do you understand why this can't be forgiven, David? David nodded slowly, his face a mask of defeat. Yes, sir, he whispered. I understand. Daniel stared at him for a long moment, the weight of his words hanging in the air like a final judgment. You're fired, David, he said quietly, his voice low but resolute. Pack up your things and don't come back. This restaurant has no place for people who treat others with disrespect and prejudice. Your actions not only hurt my wife, but also damage the reputation of this establishment. David's face crumpled, but he didn't argue. He knew there was no point. Slowly, he rose from his chair, his shoulders hunched in defeat. I'm really sorry, he mumbled one last time, though the words sounded hollow even to his own ears. Daniel didn't respond, his eyes cold as he watched David leave the office. The door clicked shut behind him, the sound echoing in the heavy silence of the room. Monica exhaled slowly, her body relaxing for the first time since the meeting had begun. The tension that had gripped her chest all morning was finally beginning to lift. It was over. David was gone. Daniel leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples as the weight of the situation settled over him. I wanted to give him a chance to be honest, he said softly, his voice filled with exhaustion, but I knew he wouldn't make it right. You did the right thing, Monica said gently, her voice filled with both gratitude and relief. He needed to go. People like him don't just change overnight. Daniel nodded slowly. I know. And this place, our place, has to stand for more than that. Monica reached across the desk, taking his hand in hers. We did what we needed to do. He squeezed her hand, offering a small, tired smile. We did. The restaurant was quieter than usual the day after David's firing. The news of what had happened had spread quickly among the staff, and while no one had voiced their concerns directly to Monica or Daniel, there was an unspoken tension that hung in the air. Monica walked through the dining area, the familiar sound of plates clinking and glasses being polished barely registering in her mind. She knew that the firing had been necessary, but the aftermath left her feeling a strange mix of emotions. Relief, yes, but also a lingering sadness that the place she had poured her heart into had been the scene of such blatant discrimination. As she made her way toward the kitchen, she was stopped by Rebecca, the head chef, who had been with Silver Oak since its opening. Rebecca was a tall woman with a commanding presence, her chef's coat crisp and white as always. But today, her usual confidence seemed slightly muted. Monica, Rebecca called, her voice cautious as she approached. Can we talk for a second? Monica nodded, motioning for her to follow as they stepped into the small office adjacent to the kitchen. Once inside, Rebecca closed the door behind her, her expression serious. I just wanted to check in with you, Rebecca began, her voice careful. About what happened with David. Monica leaned against the desk, her arms crossed as she waited for Rebecca to continue. Go on, Rebecca sighed, rubbing the back of her neck awkwardly. Look, I don't want to overstep, but I think it's important that we address what happened, really address it with the staff. There's been a lot of talk about it, and while I think most people understand why David was fired, I think some of the newer staff are confused. Monica raised an eyebrow, her frustration simmering just beneath the surface. Confused about what exactly? Rebecca hesitated, clearly trying to choose her words carefully. I think they're just uncomfortable, not with the firing, but with how quickly everything went down. They don't know the full story, and some of them are worried about what this means for the restaurant. Monica's jaw tightened, her irritation flaring at the idea that anyone would question what had happened. Are you saying they don't think David deserved to be fired? Rebecca quickly shook her head, her expression earnest. No, not at all. I think everyone agrees that he crossed a line. But I think there's a fear that maybe there's more going on that they don't know about. And you know how rumors can spread. Monica exhaled slowly, her anger softening just slightly. She knew Rebecca was right. The staff needed to be addressed, not just to explain what had happened, but to reinforce the values that Silver Oak stood for. You're right, Monica said finally, her voice steady. We need to have a meeting. The staff deserves to know the truth about what happened and why it happened. We can't afford to let anyone think this was just some random decision. Rebecca nodded, relief washing over her face. I think that would help a lot. People look up to you and Daniel. They need to hear it from both of you. Monica smiled softly, grateful for Rebecca's honesty. Thank you for bringing this to me. I'll talk to Daniel and we'll set something up for tomorrow. As Rebecca left the office, Monica felt a sense of clarity settle over her. She and Daniel had made the right decision to firing David, but now it was time to make sure everyone understood why. This wasn't just about one man's actions. It was about ensuring that Silver Oak remained a place where respect and equality were non-negotiable. The staff meeting was held the next morning, just before the lunch service. Monica and Daniel stood in front of the restaurant, facing the group of waitstaff, chefs, and managers who had gathered around. The air was thick with anticipation, the tension from the previous days still palpable. Monica glanced at Daniel, who nodded encouragingly before she stepped forward to address the group. I want to thank you all for being here, Monica began, her voice steady but filled with the weight of what she was about to say. I know there's been a lot of talk about what happened with David, and I think it's important that we address it head on. The group was silent, their eyes fixed on her as they waited for her to continue. David was fired because he chose to treat a customer with disrespect, Monica said firmly. That customer happened to be me, but this isn't about who I am. This is about the values we've built this restaurant on. Silver Oak is a place where everyone is treated with dignity and respect, regardless of who they are, what they look like, or where they come from. She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. What David did wasn't just a mistake. It was a choice to ignore me, to treat me differently because he didn't think I deserved the same level of respect as the other diners. And that kind of behavior will never be tolerated here. There was a murmur of agreement from the group, and Monica could see the relief on some of their faces as they realized that this wasn't just about one incident. It was about something much bigger. Daniel stepped forward then, his voice calm but authoritative as he spoke. We hold everyone here to the same standard. Whether you've been with us since the beginning or you're new to the team, the expectation is the same. Treat everyone with respect. If anyone feels like they can't do that, then this isn't the place for them. Monica nodded in agreement, feeling a sense of quiet resolve wash over her. The message had been clear, and the staff understood. They weren't just running a restaurant. They were upholding a standard of respect and dignity that went beyond food and service. As the meeting came to a close, Monica felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The storm had passed, and though there were still challenges ahead, she knew that they had done the right thing. Silver Oak was stronger for it, and so was she. The day after the staff meeting, Silver Oak opened its doors to a steady flow of regulars and new customers, unaware of the weight that had been lifted behind the scenes. The clinking of glasses, soft laughter, and murmured conversations filled the air as usual. But for Monica, everything felt slightly different. She stood at the entrance for a moment, watching the guests settle into their seats, the sound of service in full swing. It was as though the restaurant had taken a deep breath, its rhythm restored. Daniel appeared beside her, his presence grounding. How are you feeling today? He asked, his voice soft. Monica glanced up at him, offering a small but genuine smile. Better. It feels like things are getting back to normal. Or at least, our new normal. Daniel nodded. We handled it, and we're stronger because of it. Monica looked around the restaurant, her pride in what they had built slowly returning. We've built something special here, Daniel. Something that means more than just food and service. Daniel smiled softly. We always said Silver Oak would be more than just a place to eat. It's a reflection of the values we stand for. That's why people keep coming back. As the lunch rush continued, Monica and Daniel retreated to a quieter part of the restaurant, where they could observe without being directly involved in the day-to-day operations. Monica watched as the staff moved seamlessly from table to table, delivering the exceptional service that Silver Oak was known for. There was a sense of unity among them now, a silent but powerful acknowledgement of what they were all working toward. Monica knew that the confrontation with David had been a pivotal moment, not just for her personally, but for the entire staff. It forced everyone to confront their own values and ask themselves if they truly embodied the respect and inclusivity that Silver Oak stood for. And in the days that followed, Monica had noticed small but meaningful changes to how the staff interacted with each other, how they treated every customer with the same level of care and attention. But despite the sense of closure, Monica couldn't shake the feeling that there was more they needed to do. She didn't want Silver Oak to simply bounce back from what had happened. She wanted to take this opportunity to push forward, to make a statement that went beyond just running a restaurant. "I've been thinking," Monica said, breaking the comfortable silence between her and Daniel. Daniel raised an eyebrow, his attention fully on her now. "About what?" Monica took a deep breath, her thoughts finally taking shape. "About how we can take what happened and turn it into something bigger. I don't just want this to be a story that we move on from. I want to make sure that this place stands as a symbol of what we believe in, something that everyone in the community can see and feel." Daniel's expression softened as he listened. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking we should host a community event," Monica said, her voice growing more certain as she spoke. "Something that brings people together, customers, staff, local leaders, where we can celebrate inclusivity and diversity. I want Silver Oak to be a space where people from all walks of life feel welcome, not just because we say so, but because we live it." Daniel smiled, a look of admiration in his eyes. "I love that idea, and I think it's exactly what we need right now." Monica's heart swelled with excitement as the idea took root. "We'll invite community leaders, activists, maybe even some local artists. It can be a celebration of culture and unity. We've always said Silver Oak is more than just a restaurant. This will show people what we mean." Daniel nodded, already thinking through logistics. "We could hold it in the courtyard out back, set up some tents, maybe even hire a live band to play some music. It'll be something people talk about for years." Monica felt a surge of energy as they began brainstorming, the weight of the past few days lifting with each new idea. This was the path forward, turning a moment of conflict into an opportunity for growth, for something bigger than themselves. In the weeks leading up to the event, Silver Oak buzzed with a sense of purpose. Monica had thrown herself into organizing every detail, from the guest list to the entertainment, determined to make it a night that would leave a lasting impact. Daniel handled the logistics, coordinating with vendors and ensuring the event would run smoothly. Together, they had created something that felt like more than just an event. It felt like a new beginning for Silver Oak. The day of the event finally arrived, and Silver Oak had been transformed. The courtyard behind the restaurant was lined with string lights, casting a warm glow over the space. Tents had been set up for food and drinks, with small stations featuring local artists and craftspeople displaying their work. A stage had been built for the live band, and the soft strains of jazz filled the air as guests began to arrive. Monica stood near the entrance, greeting guests with a wide smile as they filtered into the courtyard. She felt an overwhelming sense of pride, not just in the event itself, but in what it represented. This was the Silver Oak. She had always envisioned a place where people from all backgrounds could come together, where everyone felt welcome. As the evening progressed, Monica moved through the crowd, chatting with local leaders, customers, and friends who had come to support the event. Everywhere she looked, there were people laughing, dancing, and enjoying the sense of community that filled the air. At one point, Monica found herself standing at the edge of the courtyard, watching as the band played a lively tune while couples danced under the twinkling lights. She spotted Jessica, the waitress who had helped her that fateful night, laughing with a group of servers near the food tents. Rebecca, the head chef, stood by the grill, chatting animatedly with a local food critic. Monica's heart swelled with pride as she took it all in. Daniel appeared beside her, his arm wrapped around her waist as they watched the scene unfold together. "You did it," he said softly, his voice filled with admiration. "We did it," Monica corrected, leaning into him. "This feels like something more, doesn't it? Like we've built something real." Daniel nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It does. This is exactly what we needed." Monica smiled, feeling the weight of everything they had gone through finally lift. The event was more than just a celebration. It was a statement, a reminder that Silver Oak was a place where everyone belonged, where differences were celebrated, not ignored. As the night continued, Monica and Daniel stood side by side, watching the community they had built come together in a way that felt powerful, unifying, and deeply personal. The event at Silver Oak had been an overwhelming success, And in the days that followed, Monica received an outpouring of support from both the local community and the restaurant's patrons. People had been touched by the event's message, and it was clear that Silver Oak's reputation as a place of inclusivity and respect had only grown stronger. But for Monica, the most important part was knowing that they had taken something painful and turned it into an opportunity for growth. She and Daniel had faced a challenge head-on, and in doing so, they had created something even more meaningful than before. One morning, a week after the event, Monica and Daniel sat together in the small office behind the restaurant, going over the final numbers from the event. The feedback had been overwhelmingly positive, and Monica felt a deep sense of satisfaction knowing that they had achieved exactly what they had set out to do. As she looked over the reports, her thoughts drifted to the future. Silver Oak had always been more than just a restaurant, but now it feels like a movement, a place where people from all walks of life could come together, share a meal, and feel seen and respected. "I've been thinking," Monica said, her voice thoughtful as she set down the reports. Daniel glanced up at his computer, a curious look on his face. "About what?" "About expanding," Monica said, her eyes lighting up with excitement. "Not just the restaurant, but the idea of Silver Oak. What if we took this message and brought it to other places? Other cities?" Daniel's eyebrows shot up, clearly intrigued. "You mean open another Silver Oak?" Monica nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities. "Why not? We've built something special here, something that people are responding to. I think we could do it again, in other places that need a space like this." Daniel leaned back in his chair, a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "I like the way you think," Mrs. Taylor. Monica grinned, feeling a surge of energy at the thought of what they could accomplish. "I just think there's so much more we can do, so many people we can reach." Daniel nodded, his excitement growing. "Let's do it. Let's start planning." Monica's heart raced with anticipation as they began discussing potential locations, strategies, and ways to maintain the core values that had made Silver Oak what it was. It was clear that this wasn't just about opening another restaurant. It was about spreading the message they had worked so hard to build. As they brainstormed, Monica felt a sense of purpose settle over her. The past few months had been filled with challenges, but they had emerged stronger, and now they were ready to take Silver Oak to new heights. Together, they created something that went beyond food and service. They had built a space where everyone belonged, and now they were ready to share that with the world. The sun was setting over the city as Monica and Daniel stood in the courtyard of Silver Oak, watching as the last few diners lingered over dessert and coffee. The soft glow of the string lights overhead cast a warm, golden hue over the scene, and the gentle hum of conversation filled the air. Monica took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past few months finally lift completely. They had faced challenges, but they had come through stronger, more united than ever. Silver Oak was more than just a restaurant. It was a symbol of everything they believed in, and now they were ready to take that message even further. As she and Daniel stood side by side, watching the world they had built together, Monica felt a sense of peace settle over her. The future was bright, filled with possibilities. And whatever came next, she knew they were ready. Because in Silver Oak, everyone had a seat at the table. If you enjoyed and want more powerful stories about overcoming adversity, building strong communities, and celebrating diversity, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. By subscribing, you'll stay updated on all our latest stories and events, and you'll be supporting the message of inclusivity and respect that drives everything we do. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update, and join us as we continue to create content that inspires and uplifts.